Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of ND and ABA with Martin and Dan. I'm your host, Martin, and alongside of me is my co host, Dan. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm so happy to be here with you and excited to have our esteemed guest, Eileen Lamb, here with us today. This is what is it now, our eighth episode of ND
Yep.
and ABA. And we just want to thank all our listeners for putting their time in to hear about current contention these days and current positive change that we are looking to promote on our show. There's been growth in the field, there's been challenges, but we are all doing our best to create the best world for the future and for our children. So, before we get started today, I wanted to take a personal note. I actually brought my banjo because it came in handy when I was with some students this week, and they really need to know how proud of them we are. One thing that Martin said is that the parents, like Eileen here, are like rays of gold, and they help autistic children and all children get home, feel safe, feel protected, like they're there for them. But what the kids should realize, and what I want them to realize, is that their smiles are our rays of gold. And that when we see their happiness, it makes us filled with strength and it brightens our day.
That was great, Dan. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Martin. I really wanted to bring that out and just wanted to tell the kids how much they mean to us all and wish everyone a happy early Mother's Day. So, happy early Mother's Day, Eileen. Thank you for all you're doing for the kids as well. And I'm wondering, if you might be able to share your insights on the recent Profound Autism Summit that occurred April 5th in Massachusetts this year. I think it was their first one. So, if you wouldn't mind telling us how it went and what it was all about.
Of course. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be invited to be a speaker at the first ever Profound Autism Summit. And it was a great experience. I think it's really important to give a voice to caregivers, because it's amazing when autistic people can advocate for themselves, like myself. But a lot of the time, autistic people are either children or they have profound autism and they're just not able to communicate and self-advocate. And when that's the case, you need to look up to their parents or caregivers. And the Profound Autism Summit did a great job at giving a voice to caregivers who are often pushed out of the conversation on social media, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And shout out to the Profound Autism Summit, all of the media that you guys have shared on Instagram. If you guys don't follow them at Profound Autism Summit, they've really been making a push to share the voice of those with profound autism, which is a very large percentage of the autistic population. Actually, they release statistics saying 1 in 4 autistic people are subject to profound autism. So that is a population that we need to serve and remember always when we are caring for individuals, both in the field of ABA, but also just in our society, the way we set things forward to be the best world for our children, for everyone's children, and for adults as well. Um, there's no need to infantilize when we're talking about ABA, but I think a lot of people maybe take offense and think that people are trying to infantilize when their intention is to make a safe world for children. And there is a fine line there. So I really want to commend you, Eileen, for doing your part to walk that line. And some of the stuff I've seen from your account at the Autism Cafe has really spoken to me, both as a clinician and a person, showing me that there is a way to tell everyone how much we care about the children so that there's a better world for them when they're adults as well. Martin, would you like to take it from here?
Definitely. So, one of the first questions that I have is, we've seen that you've written a couple books and you're working on a third one. So what inspired you to start writing and sharing your experiences about parenting a child with autism?
Good question. Writing books has been a dream of mine since I was so little. I mean, I started writing when I was very young, like 3, 4 years old, and it's just been my dream forever. I just didn't know what I wanted to write a book about until autism came into my life. Well, technically, it's been part of my life forever, but I didn't learn I was on the spectrum until I was 25. But when Charlie, my son, was diagnosed with level 3 profound autism, and I was diagnosed with level 1 autism, I just felt like I had an interesting perspective to share, being someone who's obviously done well for herself, and someone who was able to have a job, get married, have kids, and raising a child like Charlie, who most likely won't ever be able to do these things. The spectrum is so broad, and I was seeing on social media so much misinformation. And again, like the parents being pushed out of the conversation, people feeling so alone in their journey and feeling like nobody else gets it. And my first book, All Across the Spectrum, was really about making parents and other people who are on the spectrum, like us, feel like they're not alone. Because honestly, even as an adult on the spectrum, sometimes I feel like I don't belong, because all I see from other self-advocates is not things I can relate to. They say that like severe autism doesn't exist, ABA is abuse. You can say you have autism, you have to say you're autistic. The color blue is disgusting. Oh, and the puzzle piece is abusive. It's like all of these things, like I cannot relate to at all. So it was really important for me to put my perspective out there for other people.
Right.
Certainly. And by the way, thank you for making sure that the intent is known. It comes from a place of love. A lot of these things that people are putting out there that sometimes others think perhaps for their purposes we should change it, augment it to something else, doesn't mean that this symbolism was meant for any malintent in the first place. And perhaps there are positive attributes that can be compared to the puzzle piece as well, though it does carry the contention between that and the infinity symbol, I know. One thing I like about puzzles is they can be puzzling, which is actually exciting. Something that makes them worthwhile. And I think that perhaps that's maybe an attribute that could be focused on more when discussing this than perhaps the needing to be solved question that is often out there. Martin, I know I got off track then, but I know you have some important things to say.
Yeah, no, everything's, we really appreciate the work that you're doing. And before I bring that up, what advice would you give to parents who are just beginning to navigate their own journey with a child that is autistic? They just recently got their diagnosis. So is there any advice you can give them?
Yes. I mean, and again, I think something that's important to remember is that what works for one autistic person is not necessarily going to work for the next one, right? Because autistic people are all different from each other. So one piece of advice I can give parents, and it's really hard to do, is to not compare their child to other children. That's something that I did at the beginning, because as Charlie got older, I could see his peers doing things that, I mean, Charlie can't do now at 11. Like he's those little, like 3 years old, were able to do things that Charlie still cannot do. And like that can be heartbreaking as a parent. But the one thing that's really helped me is to learn to celebrate all of the little wins that wouldn't be a win for the parents of a neurotypical child, but they matter to our family, and that means something. So that would be my first piece of advice. Try not to compare and celebrate the little wins. And also, the biggest one really is take everything you read on social media with a a grain of salt. I think that's the expression. Like, because
Right.
there are some very, very vocal people on social media who are gonna try to make you feel guilty for the choices you're making, even though they don't know your child, they don't know your family. You know, at the end of the day, you know your child best, you know your family best, and what people say on the internet is just their opinion, but it shouldn't have an impact on everything you do. You know, you shouldn't like stop what you're doing because you read something that goes against it. You know, try things for your child, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you got to
Right.
try it out for yourself, not just because you saw one Instagram post or because someone said this there. You know, there's just an echo chamber out there of people like repeating the same thing over and over. Like ABA's abuse is one of these
Hmm.
things, but they're just talking to themselves in an echo chamber, right? And
Right.
I think it's important to seek out other perspectives of like autistic adults who are in favor of ABA, for instance, but also to try it for yourself. And then you
Right.
can decide if it doesn't work.
Right. Okay. Now, this is kind of the second part to that question because I know there are some parents who don't or who are not sure about ABA, and I totally agree. Everything on the internet, take it with a grain of salt. But for parents who aren't sure if ABA would be best for them, is there anything you could say to either encourage them or tell them, like, at least give it a shot? Because I know for some, ABA most likely won't work. I mean, I'm not trying to be like, I'm not against ABA or anything, but from what I've heard, it works for some and it doesn't work for all. But is there anything you would tell the parents, like, to at least try it out or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna know if it's a good fit for your family, for your
Mhm,
child, or yourself. Some adults are in ABA if you don't
mhm,
try it, right?
right,
And you can literally stop it the next day if you think it's not a good fit, right? There is like
right,
nothing to lose in trying it out. Also, I think people don't realize how much power, for lack of a better word,
mhm,
parents have on the ABA program. Like you can work on goals, ABA goals with your BCBA. You can tell your BCBA, hey, I don't like the way this goal is being worked on. Like involve yourself in the ABA, you know, like be your child's advocate. Like a couple of times there were things I didn't like that were being done in ABA. And again, Charlie, my son, has been in ABA for 9 years. So it's like
mhm,
thousands and thousands of hours. So when I say a couple of things, that's really not a lot in the grand scheme of
mhm,
things. All I
right,
had to do was tell them, and they changed it. It's really just that simple, you know, communication. Because again, what works for one child, one family doesn't work for the next. And just communicate. But also, I want to say that my son, Charlie,
mhm,
profound autism, he really, really benefited from ABA. For instance, they taught him to communicate with an AAC device. When he started ABA at 2, I mean, he was completely nonverbal. He screamed all day. He's still nonverbal, but he can communicate basic needs with his AAC device.
mhm.
And that was introduced by his ABA team. And for that, I am so thankful.
Wow.
That's
And
awesome.
actually, Martin, if you don't mind, I
Mhm,
wanted to actually ask Eileen a question about this earlier.
mhm,
It's probably very important for a lot of our listeners to hear the perspective of a parent, as well as an autistic individual who cares about ABA. We're wondering what you might have to give in terms of advice for the field of ABA for all of us so that we might be able to create the best practices in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you know, something that comes up a lot on social media is that ABA is trying to make the autistic person normal. And that's not something I've ever seen in the many years, 9+ years of witnessing ABA, you know, with my son, Charlie. And I used to see ABA session in my own home, 8 hours a day for years. So I've seen many, many hours. But I want to say that I think that would be a valid criticism, that if some RBTs or BCBAs are still, because I know that used to be a thing, to try and like force eye contact and to discourage steaming. And I think that that shouldn't happen, right? Because there is no harm in steaming if the child is not harming himself or others. Now, I know that some steaming can be harmful to the autistic person and also to people around. Like sometimes Charlie steams so hard that he can hurt himself. Like one of his steam is to like slap himself in the face. That should be stopped. But if he's just like flapping his hands and not bothering anybody, I think it's really important that ABA therapists do not try and prevent that from happening. And again, communication with parents is so important, for people in the field, because they need to be involved. I mean, it's their child after all, and you can be the best professional in your field. Ultimately, parents, caregivers are gonna know their child best.
Right.
Definitely. And by the way, parents who are listening, and if any kids are listening, pat yourselves on the back, because you guys are always trying new things and adapting as you gain experience, both for your child and as a child. And so
Mhm.
both of those things are very difficult learning curves. And what I think that is challenging for a lot of people, if you are a consumer of ABA as a parent or as an adult or as a child or as anybody, is the standardization of things sometimes reflects a neurotypical value where it shouldn't. And I like how you brought that out, the eye contact and the stimming, because those things are certainly things that can be harmless and are not necessary to reduce unless there's a present danger. I'll give everyone an example that my fiance does to me constantly. I'm sure a lot of people's significant others are telling them to stop picking, stop pulling, stop fiddling, with your face or something. Don't leave that alone, please. And there's other times, you're crack your knuckles, you're
Mhm.
patting on, patting the drum beat on the table. I like to do a weird thing. I play the banjo like on my fiance's knuckles sometimes. She doesn't complain, but if I'm picking or something or scratching or if I'm like, messing with something, that's uncomfortable, she'll tell me, leave that alone.
Mhm.
Let the aquaphor take care of that later or something. She's very, very good at taking care of me. Shout out to my fiance at Wired Weird Crafts. If any of you guys buy her crochet stuff, please buy some more. I'm just joking. Actually do if you want. I didn't mean to say I was joking there. But everyone pat yourself on the back, and you too, Eileen, because you're going that extra mile, trying different things. And even if the standard is there to work, like, let's say, a good portion of the time, there's always that moment in the present moment where you can see if there's a risk that you're not willing to take, you can adapt. And I think that comes into play with stimming a lot of times, right? Sometimes let's redirect this to be something safe. Sometimes let's leave it alone, not even worry about it because it's just making them comfortable. And we have to decide when is the time to just forego the principles of ABA when stimming is involved, because it's not harmful and they can be themselves. Just be yourself. And if you tell your BCBA, as a BCBA, I'm telling you all this as parents, please just tell them to change. You don't like something that's happening in your child's treatment, you have every right to ask for it to change. And it is entirely ultimately based on your consent being informed. And also, in a lot of circumstances, we now take in the child's assent as well. So if we can tell that there's not buy-in from both parties, that is a strong indicator there needs to be change. And if it's not, you have every right to speak up about it, and we'll pat you on the back again. If you spoke up about it and you got things to change, you're a hero and you did the right thing. people can get lost in their instructions and their examples professionally. People sometimes make mistakes as professionals, and you as a parent have that present awareness to understand that they may be human and to interject when necessary. And that's just a heroic action. And there's nothing else to say about that, I think. Unless, of course, Eileen, you had something to add. Feel free.
No, that was perfectly said.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
Perfect.
the validation. So yeah, thank you for the advice for me as a clinician and also as somebody who cares deeply about children in general. I really feel that even though I don't have kids, no matter who my children are in the future, I plan on accepting them and creating the most inclusive world possible for them to live in without discrimination or bullying or disenfranchisement in any way, shape, or form. So thank you for being here, helping us with our mission, raising inclusion, raising acceptance for both neurodivergent people, communities, and also for the field of ABA. One more time, pat yourself on the back. If you don't like that, reward yourself, with whatever you like. Obviously, I like the coffee, which I don't have today because I'm actually pleased just to be here with you guys. It's well enough for me. Martin,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you might want to share a little bit about your mission and values in terms of creating that most inclusive world going forward for everyone's children, for adults, for autistic people, for neurodiverse communities. I
Mhm.
actually had the chance to share your video of that speech you gave at the legislative luncheon, I
Mhm.
believe it was last week. Uh,
Yep.
that was sold out, 350 seats, including Congress members. And you were so eloquent that I just had to share it with teenagers who are autistic that might think, is there ever going to be a time that people will hear me and listen to me? And will people see me and be able to value my opinion? And when they
Mhm.
saw you, I could tell they knew they would be all right. And when the parents saw you, I think they were able to believe that their son will be all right, or their daughter will be all right, or their child will be all right going out to
Mhm.
college like you do, for instance.
Right.
So thank you, by the way, for sharing that with me, for doing the advocacy you did in April. I know you were so exhausted after working tirelessly every
Yeah.
single day of April to
Yeah.
promote awareness and inclusion. And I'm sure you too, Eileen. And thank you for going to the Profound Autism Summit. For those of us who weren't able to attend, it was great to see the publicity of it raising. And we did shout it out on our show. So, we'd love to include more. If the Profound Autism Summit would like to come on and send someone, we would be
That would be
more than
cool.
happy to have you guys.
I have a couple more questions for Eileen, but the first one is, can you share some of the most significant challenges and triumphs you've experienced in the journey so far as an autism parent?
So many, honestly, but I would say that the hardest thing lately has been Charlie's really severe and dangerous behaviors.
Mhm.
One of them is pica, which is a compulsive urge to eat non-edible items.
Right.
And at the worst of it, Charlie was engaging in pica every 1 minute and 30 seconds, which
Mhm.
was absolutely horrible because he was never safe.
Right.
He had a screw removed from his colon, which was really scary.
Mhm.
Um, and we had to take everything out of his room. He started eating through his clothes overnight.
Mhm.
That's how bad it was. Self-injurious behaviors, elopement. Um, doesn't mean getting married. It means running away, for those who are not
Mhm.
familiar with that language.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think beyond the fact that Charlie is nonverbal and can communicate beyond basic needs, the hardest part of raising a child with profound autism, or at least
Mhm.
raising Charlie, has been those dangerous behaviors, because he's a danger to himself and sometimes to other people too when he starts getting aggressive.
Right.
And I don't think we do a good enough job talking about those challenging behaviors that sometimes often happen with autism.
Right.
Certainly. I'd like to add for our audience that it's deeply important to parents and to clinicians to consider the risks and the benefits of anything we do for children, for adults, for autistic people, but for anyone we care for. There's always a risk and a benefit analysis that goes through. And sometimes if the risk is that, like you said, there could be a night where you have to go and get something removed from the colon. That is a much higher risk than using ABA strategies to reduce this behavior, even though it may be slightly uncomfortable at times. And on that note, there are ways now where, in the safest way possible, more dangerous and severe problem behaviors can be helped to reduce and to create a safe environment for children within ABA through certain methods that we see now in, for instance, PFA, SBT, largely are used without restraints successfully, without any danger to the staff or the individual because of the process they will use. And this process allows for a degree of autonomy, but also if there's discomfort present, there's in protocol supposed to be an empowerment of that individual to get their autonomy back and essentially remove the aversive stimuli, which may be the programming, and give them the time they need to at least have an enjoyable experience in their life for a minute or so before you are even supposed to start engaging again in programming. This is important to note. A lot of people think that this will increase severe problem behaviors, but the thing about those is they actually do take effort to do. So when you are just praising enough by saying, I know what you're doing, and you're backing off, and you are relinquishing things that, let's say, they can eat instead. For PICA, though, there is a time where you may have to remove those things from the environment. And I want to say to everyone, regardless of that that's a reinforcer, it's still well within that cost and benefit analysis to create that safe environment before practicing ABA by removing those items. And if you're going to work with them, you want to make sure that it's safe enough that parents consent to the procedure, especially if they're dealing with PICA. Some parents might not even want to take that risk. And that's something to consider. It's also considerable to always speak with the doctor before implementing certain plans that have had medical side effects and history in the past, such as PICA. We got a little bit clinical there for a second, Martin. I do apologize because I want to raise space for the autistic people in the world to express their feedback for the field of ABA, and perhaps not so much the other way around today. And if you could help me out, I would love if you could ask Eileen a few questions about how maybe she has come across your experience in the field, because I want you to see it's very inspiring what you do. Maybe I'll just ask Eileen. Eileen,
Yeah.
I'm a bit nervous today, but I wanted to ask you about Martin's advocacy and how you maybe came across our podcast in the first place to be here.
Actually, I came across your podcast because Martin reached out to me on Instagram, and I'm so glad he did. And he does a great job advocating for himself and for others in the field. He's always thinking about caregivers and parents, and I love that his advocacy is not just him. It's really encompassing of everyone in the autism and autistic community. So great job to you and you both for this.
Thank you. So my next question for you, Eileen, is, let's see, where was it? How do you collaborate with Charlie's therapist to ensure consistency and progress?
We actually have weekly meetings, and we're always in touch, via emails and those weekly meetings, just to make sure that we're always staying on top of the things that are important, not to them, but to me as a mom and to Charlie as a person, because ABA it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's tailor-based to the child's needs, right? And that's why that communication, again, is so important. I'm always talking with his BCBA, and she always knows like if there are new behaviors that are happening that we need to target right away.
Right.
She knows like if there is a regression in certain skills, because regression is really common with Charlie,
Mhm.
and that really helps. But again, communication is key here.
Definitely, definitely. So we talked earlier where we've seen online how ABA is abused or like controversial. Like, I'm trying to figure out like how do you handle like the negative reactions or skepticism from others? Because I know it seems like the negative comments about it are daily, it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, it's not always easy. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
Especially when people get so nasty that they say things like, "You're a really horrible mother for having your
Mhm.
child in ABA. You should go to jail. You're a child
Mhm.
abuser." Like it's
Right.
not just, well, I'm not a fan of ABA. It didn't work for me. No, no, no. They go like mean. They take it very
Right.
far, and it's not constructive, and I'm at the point where I've heard it so much that I just roll my eyes now, because it's like it's the same thing,
Yeah.
child abuser, and it's torture, it's convergent therapy. You're trying to
Right.
make him normal, and I'm like, I know it's not true, so it goes above my head right now. But the thing is,
Right.
I've been doing this for 9 years, right? So I'm
Right.
used to it. And there are
Mhm.
parents who are completely new to the field of ABA, to
Mhm.
autism, social media, and they're gonna read this, and they're not gonna be able to, brush it off. They're gonna read this and they're gonna be terrified. They're gonna be like, "Oh my God, my doctor just recommended ABA for my son, for my daughter, and people are saying it's abusive and it's torture and it's convergent therapy and it's
Mhm.
ableist and this and that." And
Right.
that's why it makes me so angry. Those comments
Right.
make me angry, not because I care about the attacks on me as a mother and all of that. That I'm used to. It makes me angry because it's pushing people away from ABA therapy, people
Right.
who could have benefited from it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
It's really important that you said that, actually, Eileen, because one of the things that uh, brought us into the discussion about the Profound Autism Summit this April was that we know there's a lot of daily media attacks on the field of ABA, and what the people perhaps posting these discussions and these echo chambers don't realize is their comments aren't hurting the ABA providers that they want them to be hurting. And by the way, if you guys want to hurt an ABA provider, come, find me and tell me all of your complaints, and really just break my heart. That's fine with me. But what you're doing when you're posting that in a public forum ultimately ends up hurting an autistic person and their family, and also neurodiverse people in general. So I really want to ask those who are not able to see things objectively and see that there is 1 in 4 autistic people with profound autism that actually rely on ABA for their safety and their families' comfort every day, that you're hurting them if you post that in a public forum. If you want to complain, do it through the HR department of your child's ABA provider that you don't like, or maybe the person that is under, ABA, that you think is somehow ableist and wrong. Make that a formal complaint to that provider. Do not make it a formal complaint to Facebook or Twitter, because, or rather X, as Elon Musk is having us call it now. That's not going to affect the people that you're trying to influence. It's not. And by the way, we're open, and we feel deep regret, most people in the field of ABA nowadays, about the neurotypical values that have been enforced in the past. The eye contact, the emphasis on reshaping stimming to more neurotypically acceptable behaviors. And most of us have made the the vow to change in any way possible what we're doing and what other people are doing when we see it. So it makes us also, perhaps a little angry clinically when we hear those things, but mostly it doesn't even make them angry. It makes people sad. It's deeply saddening. And perhaps that is the effect you want to have on clinicians, but it's
Hmm.
not being voiced in the right place. So
Right.
if you see abuse, you do call it out, but you call it out in the right sphere. You call it
Right.
out in the courts. Okay. You don't call it out on Instagram or what else do we have nowadays? Threads.
TikTok.
That's new.
Mhm.
TikTok. Yes, I'm so old. I'm only 28. My gosh, I forgot about TikTok. Please leave it for the courts. Call it out to them. And like Martin did, he spoke to the mayor. He asked the city to work on autism inclusion and acceptance.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
opened a sensory room for people of young ages to get
Yeah.
that free access to a STEM friendly environment, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And this change is possible for those who say ABA is abuse and they want to make a change. But it's not possible when autistic people are being hurt by the
Right.
message you're sending. And maybe that's all I'll say about that. Do you guys have anything to add?
I just have two more questions left, Eileen. This is first off, this has been such an incredible episode to have you on. And it's like when I first followed you, it's kind of been like a dream of mine to interview you because you've been such an amazing parent and seeing every everything. It's just awesome. So my second to last question for you is for Charlie, what have been some of his milestones and accomplishments that you've seen?
Yeah, the biggest one is communication. I mean, using his AAC device has just been something that I honestly only dreamed of when Charlie was diagnosed with autism, because all he could do was scream. And that AAC device, I mean, it's given him a voice, not for everything. He can tell me if he's in pain, he can tell me how he's feelings, but at least when he wants something, he can just use his words. We call his iPad his words. And that's been probably not probably, it's been the biggest milestone. But also he's been able to learn some self-care skills thanks to ABA, like brushing teeth, getting dressed, using the bathroom, not fully independently, but almost.
Mhm.
Um, and he's learned to tolerate dental appointments, which means we don't have to do anesthesia for him anymore, which is, I mean,
Mhm.
come on, how amazing is that? And
Definitely.
haircuts. He can sit through haircuts now. He used to scream so hard. I was afraid, like, oh, how do you call that? A child welfare check was going to be called on us because of how
Right.
much he would scream. We did it at home, when his hair got too long, but he would still like scream like so much. And now he
Right.
can tolerate haircuts. And
That's
that's thanks
awesome.
to ABA. Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome.
I can only tolerate haircuts thanks to Where's Waldo. And this is something I tell my ABA students constantly. And they think it's funny when we do the Waldo. But you know what? I just want to just say how much it really means to us when we see all the things that you share online, even though it might be hard for you to share, especially with those comments that you will get probably daily, as you mentioned, and people saying things that they they mean to hurt ABA, not you, coming into to you in a personal mode of attack, and the strength you show and still posting a story that explains to everybody what it's like for Charlie and you. Sometimes, of course, people might see that he looks like he's just thriving, right? But that's not every moment of his life, and that's why we need ABA. Perhaps there's moments where there needs to be a village, essentially.
Uh,
And us as ABA clinicians, we're willing to be that village. We're there to be that village, and nothing else, to be honest.
right.
Maybe there's ABA in business and stuff, and those people have their own village. But even in that sense, in organizational behavior management, that's still a village that people are trying to build in order to support a community. In ABA, that community is people who would be safer and more successful, happier in life with some extra tricks up their sleeves, essentially, whether they be parents or children or adults who still need help like me, not, picking their beard hairs out because they can't grow a beard to save their life. And
Right.
even at this age, 28, I'll never get to that full beard. You guys have probably seen me try, but this is the best I can do. How's it looking? Actually, it's pretty good.
Oh boy.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right.
guys. Actually, I feel great now. That's worth it. Just showing up for that.
Yeah. All right. So my very last question as we wrap up today's episode, are there any projects or initiatives you are working on that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I just sent out the manuscript for my third book, so I'm pretty excited about it. It's not going to be about autism, so probably not of interest to anybody. But it's um, one of my biggest accomplishments for me has been to fulfill
Hey,
my dream of being, a published author.
that is
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
thank you.
congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. And there is a documentary about Charlie that's coming out towards the end of the year. Right now, it's being shown at film festivals. It's won a couple of awards, and it's called Who Speaks for Charlie? And I'm excited to be able to share it with the world.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome.
Thanks.
Wow, what a perfect way to end this incredible episode. Thank you so much for your time, Eileen, and I cannot wait to keep on following along and rooting for Charlie.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
me.
Eileen. Thanks
All
everyone for
right.
watching. Have a great May and happy Mother's Day tomorrow. Okay, don't
Yep.
forget Sunday's Mother's Day, and give your mom a hug and a kiss and tell her you love her.
All
Alrighty.
right. Bye.
Bye bye.
I don't know about you, Dan, but holy cow, that was such an honor to have Eileen on with us today. That was
That was big time, wasn't it? My
yeah.
gosh. First
Yeah.
Congress, then Eileen. What's next, right? We'd love to have Robert De Niro. Robert, you coming? Well, let's see.
Somebody needs to tag him on our Instagram post when
Yeah,
this
someone
comes
tag.
out.
I'll tag him. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. So I just wanted to maximize the time with Eileen. What I've got going on, I have my next Olympics competition happening on the 18th.
Oh,
I sent in my speaker request to speak at two different conferences in Texas and Ohio that
oh
same
wow.
week. The College Autism Summit, which is 4 days in Ohio, and then the next day traveled to Texas for a 3-day retreat with Starbright Community. And so if I get accepted, I'm going to be flying out to both of those in October.
Wow. Congrats, Martin. I'm always so inspired by the many things you're doing. I wanted to share with you too. I might be going out to Florida ABA FABA in September with my colleague Isabel Mendoza Naim, who just worked on a course for bilingual RBTs in English and Spanish, working in the field of ABA with some helpful practices, for various levels of English and Spanish speaking learners. And that's
Right.
being submitted. So I'm happy to go out there. I'm hoping that they will accept our application to present it, and I'm excited to have some more news on that soon. Shout out to ABA Con Isabel, who helped me make the course. And what else? Anything else going on you want to shout out? I know your photography book is actually coming up.
Potentially, yeah. I just got to go to a few more destinations. And one of them, I'm actually going to be in Arizona next week. And I meet with the Diamondbacks on the 13th to talk about Autism Acceptance Night Game next year. And then in August, I fly to Seattle to we have like 80 people joining us for the Autism Acceptance Game with the Mariners. and
Wow.
we're working on potentially having me speak to the Washington Autism Society beforehand, pregame.
Oh my gosh, Martin, my heart goes out to you because I know all this stuff maybe is making you nervous, but I'm so proud of you, man. And honestly, like I would love nothing more than to see you do the opening pitch of the game, for instance. I feel like it's a possibility or something, and
Yeah,
oh my gosh, congrats, man. You're making the difference we all want to see. I told you how much it meant to the kids when they saw you speak in front of the Congress members at the legislative luncheon and everyone else who attended that. And really, they were just filled with hope. And you gave that to them just like you do in all your speaking arrangements, as you have told us. That people come up and they say, "I know I can tell people now without fear about my diagnosis."
yeah,
You're going to be doing great things for people in the stadiums all over in the sports arena. Shout
yeah.
out to the Diamondbacks. Shout out to the Mariners, great baseball teams. Um, great
Hey, Hawaii,
mascot.
let me tell you something. If y'all need, for anybody in Hawaii, if you want me to come out and speak, let me know. I got
Mhm.
a couple of 5K slash superhero festival coming up in Salinas, Santa Cruz, and San Jose. I'm gonna try to make it out to all three. And I recently was invited to a small little marketplace coming up here in Fremont with some of the autism parents, and there's going to be a little marketplace for autistic individuals who'd like to, showcase their things. And stimming is allowed. I want to emphasize on that. Stimming is allowed because we don't want the children to feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Martin, for just showing everybody how you can lead the way in creating inclusive spaces for everybody. And, starting out in Santa Clara, I'm sure it's going to spread out. And I'd love to get something going like that out here in Hawaii. So we'll be in touch on how maybe we can figure it out. There's lots of spaces that could benefit from that, and see if we can bring you out to open up something fun for the kids out here like we had at Helle for Autism. I could
Right.
tell these guys need a bounce house. They need a place to
Right.
spring about, you know what I mean? And we're gonna give it to them, definitely. Congrats again on opening up with Corazon Care. Shout out to
Thank you.
them as well. Shout out to Starbright as well with their upcoming convention. And yeah, again, anybody who's raising the voices of neurodivergent individual or neurodiverse communities, pat yourselves on the back. Thank you
Yeah,
sincerely from the bottom of
definitely.
our hearts. And you know what? I want to take this chance to say that it's even more important than all of that we have each other, Martin, you know?
Yes.
And I think that together we can really do anything. It's like you're my ride or die on this podcast. And I would do anything to support your cause, and I know you would do anything to support mine, and I would die trying for sure, without a doubt. So for
Definitely.
everyone who's there for your ride or die, whether it's your child, your best friend, your significant other, or your community, perhaps, good job, mahalos, and pat yourself on the back. Eat a shave ice, get a movie ticket, and go to the sauna. Do what you like, and reward yourself. And I really hope everybody has a happy Mother's Day.
Especially to all the autism moms. I know they work their butts off, and I know it's not easy at times. I mean, these times we have these meltdowns, we really don't mean it, but we truly appreciate you. So, special happy Mother's Day to you, moms. And this was something truly special. Like, wow, I'm I'm having a tough time trying to wrap my head around it because
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, yeah,
Well, you know what? Thanks to everyone for being a part of this.
yeah,
Really, all our listeners, we've seen the audience grow, and it's filled us with encouragement to keep on going, keep doing what we're doing. And thank you for sharing. And while we're on it, why don't we just ask everyone to please go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already.
give a
It's very
follow to Eileen.
at the Autism Cafe. And also, while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to
Martin's
On
channel.
YouTube, it's Martin's Autism Journey.
We'll make sure to put the link in the description for everybody. If you guys can support Spire in any way, we really want to get as many of those amazing inclusive environments out there as possible. And it's a great way to do it by supporting them. So subscribe, and thank you once again. And happy, happy, happy early Mother's Day to everybody.
And may the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you.
Yeah. All right. Bye.